What other benefits would ending factory farming have on the environment besides the immediate effect on climate change?
Well, factory farming is enormously damaging to the environment in other ways too. One really important fact is that if we take animals away from the pasture that, say, cows would graze on, and pigs to some extent as well would find roots and so on, if we take them away and we lock them up in a building, obviously we have to grow all the food that we feed to them, or in some cases catch fish and, as I say, grind them up and feed them to the animals. And that's actually a very wasteful process. In the case of cattle, we have to feed something like 10 times as much food value, both calories and protein, to the animals as compared with what we get out of it. So we're shrinking the food available to us by 90%. And with pigs and chickens, it's not quite as bad as that, but even with chickens, who are the most efficient of them, we're shrinking it by a factor of 3. So we're getting about a third as much as we put into it. And that means that we have to use a lot more cropland to feed the animals and ultimately to feed ourselves than we would if we ate the crops directly. So a great proportion of the grain that we're producing in the US gets fed to animals, and therefore a great proportion of it effectively gets wasted. And the soy crop as well is fed to animals. So sometimes people say to me when I tell them I'm vegan and they say, so where do you get your protein? I say, well, there's lots of great ways of cooking tofu, for example. And they say, oh, but tofu comes from soy, and I know that the Amazon is being deforested to produce soy. And so I wouldn't want to eat tofu. But what people don't realize is that 77% of the world's soy crop is fed to animals. So they are eating soy indirectly if they're eating beef or chicken or pork. And only, I think, something like 7% of the soy crop is eaten directly by humans as tofu or tempeh or soy milk or those products. So that's one big factor. We could have much less pressure on our cropland, we could feed more people, and we could allow some of the land to go back to forest, which of course would soak up carbon, if we were not growing these vast quantities of grain and soy just to feed to animals. A second problem is local pollution. Talk to anybody who lives near factory farming, and they will tell you factory farms are the worst kind of neighbors to have. For one thing, they stink. The manure, whether it's chickens or pigs or cows, the manure smell is terrible when the wind blows from the farm to your place. Secondly, they produce flies. All of that manure is very attractive for flies, so you get millions of flies around the areas where they are. And thirdly, they pollute the waterways because the manure, even though they try to treat it in some ways, but it inevitably, some of it runs off. You have big, heavy rainfall, and places where they're holding it will overflow and leak into the rivers. So you can no longer swim in rivers that older people will tell you they used to swim in when they were kids. The fish will die off. So there's a lot of air and water pollution as well. And all of this is a health hazard to the areas around factory farming. So it's a real environmental blight, even apart from its contribution to climate change.
Yeah, well, one of the things I was aware of was having been visiting India and China now for over 20 years, that their diets are also changing. But what I didn't know was that in China, they have these growing use of huge skyscraper farms. And I was hoping you could talk about that and what could be some of the downstream impacts of where they're taking this.
Yes, that's true. China is now building 26-story pig farms, which will process huge numbers of pigs on all of these floors filled with pigs. Obviously, they never get to leave the building. They're reared there, they live there, they're slaughtered on the site. And vast quantities of, again, grain and soy or perhaps fish meal have to get trucked in to feed them. It's a nightmare for the pigs, but it's also extremely wasteful of the food that is going there. And a lot of that food is being imported from other countries, like Brazil's soy crop may be going to feed pigs in these enormous factory farms in China. It's really a process that is using the resources, scarce resources of the planet, to feed people who are reasonably affluent. They're the ones who can afford to buy these products, and harming the planet, harming the people who can least protect themselves against environmental change.